Chatting now with Minnesota head coach PJ Fleck. PJ, thanks for the time. And first and foremost, how are you, Heather? How are the kids? How's everybody in the house holding up?
Rick, appreciate you having us on the show. We're doing elite. We really are. Kids are great. Heather's amazing. We just got a little maltipoo puppy. So we've been potty training for the last 2 weeks. So that's how we've been quarantining ourselves and keeping ourselves busy.
And I know I've seen you fairly active on the socials as well. You posted something lighthearted a few days ago, you and Heather doing some conditioning work inside the house. From an actual coaching perspective, what can you get done right now?
Well, you can get everything done. It's just a little bit different. You used to be able to kill 120 birds with one stone because you had your whole team all there hearing the same message. Now it's a little bit different. You know, you're allowed the 2 hours of Kara that the Big Ten has allowed us to do, which has been fantastic. And that's really the live Zoom stuff. So as coaches, you got to be able to decipher through and see exactly what you want to be able to do live. And then what are the other things that you feel are really important that you want to have taped and have optional that guys can have and look at if they want to do that, whether that's team meetings, whether that's the mental health, physical health, emotional health training that we continue to provide our student athletes. And again, the weight room stuff, the nutrition stuff, the yoga, the virtual voiceovers. I mean, all these things are going on. And our players, oh yeah, by the way, they still have their academics and they've got their classes and they got their tutors and their learning specialists. So we feel like we have a very mature football team who's doing everything they can to be the best they possibly can be and holding themselves accountable, trusting themselves to be able to do that and monitor themselves when there's not anybody else there to monitor them.
This is hard for everybody, for you and this team specifically, coming off the amazing step and the leap that you really took last year. You think it makes it harder or easier to swallow what you have to do when you take a little bit of that momentum and you have to tamper it just a little bit because of what's going on right now?
Yeah, the one thing we always train in our program is that just because something happened the year before, the day before, does not mean it's promised or guaranteed to happen again. You've got to earn it. Every year is its own entity. Just because we won 11 games last year does not promise we're going to win 11 games this year. You're going to have to earn every single day, right? We were picked 6th in the West last year, and we ended up finishing tied for 1st in the West. And who would have thought that? So now they've got to deal with the pressures and expectations of our team, maybe being picked towards the top of the West, somewhere up there. And now you're not going to come out of nowhere, right? People are going to expect you to be really good. And it's a whole different learning part for our players. It's a learning experience that they have to go through. And we're doing that even virtually, applying that pressure and applying that expectation and basically that mindset from afar. But like I said before, we have a very mature football team. We have a lot of guys back on offense. For the most part, have our staff intact. New coordinator, but very similar system. Mike Sanford's here and then teamed up with Matt Simon, our wide receiver coach, to be co-coordinators. Very similar system, adding amazing things that make it better. But I trust our players, and I know they trust themselves and to be able to do all the work when they're supposed to do it. And so far, I think we've had it run very clean, in a very clean way and a very educational way.
I love the word you use there, trust, PJ, because I remember being there last year a couple of times late in the season. And one of the things you kept preaching to me was how much you trusted your team to approach everything the correct way. And listen, especially on offense, but basically everywhere, that starts with the quarterback and Tanner Morgan, who I know you love as a player, as a person. How important is he during this process to keep the rest of the team together when, as you talk about the limits that you have as a coach right now?
Right. I mean, first thing with Tanner Morgan, I've known Tanner for 5 years. When you kind of look at where he was committed to us at Western Michigan, came over here to the University of Minnesota after knowing him a year and a half at Western Michigan. But, trust is earned. Trust comes down to 3 things. That's time, consistency, and proof. And, this is our 4th year. And I think our players trust our culture. I think our culture trusts our players. And we have to be able to apply those things and make sure that we have a very mature football team, which we do. And that's doing what you have to do becomes doing what you want to do. Not only that, you've got that trust factor of when you get asked to do something, you got to do it. When you got to do it, you got to do it now because now matters. And I think our players start to understand that. They know that. I think in year 2, I think we struggled with it a little bit. We were back and forth. But again, we didn't have that time, consistency, or proof that made it all connected. Last year, I thought that really brought our team together is those 3 things, that time, consistency, and proof. And I think internally, they've got to trust themselves, and then externally, they can trust their teammates. And I think we're starting to see that a lot more on our football team. Are there some that still need some work? Absolutely. But for the majority, it's nice to be able to have that trust as a head coach that your team almost gives you this sense of security that you know your guys are doing it. And it makes you feel good as a head coach when you have that type of team.
PJ, this is such an unknown for everybody. Some teams got a few spring practices in, some got absolutely none. Is there an amount of time that we can say teams truly need to be ready, regardless of whether fall/summer camp starts in July, whether it starts in August? Is there a time frame that we really need to make sure that the players are where they need to be, not just physically and not just strategically, but safety-wise as well before the season starts?
Yeah, our game is so unique and it's so different because it is a very, very, very physical, violent game. And I think that's why you start in January to prepare for the entire season. And I think back in the days, when I was going through high school, I mean, training camp got you in shape for football, right? Training camp now is just an extension of January, February, March, April, May, June, July that really kind of propels you into the season. I do think there's time needed to be able to get young people ready mentally, physically, and emotionally, especially when guys have been away from their facilities and been away from their university and their old norm for so long. There's going to have to be some type of bridge. Whatever that bridge looks like, those are for the experts to decide. But I'm in favor of making sure there is a little buffer time. And if that's an extended training camp, great. If there's OTAs, great. If it's just the month of July of doing some other stuff, getting ready for training camp, great. If you have to bump the season back, great. What are we going to be able to do? I think that's the biggest question. But there's a lot of smart people making these decisions that have the student athletes at the forefront of their mind when they're making them, and especially their mental, physical, and emotional health, which is what we all need to be concerned about, especially with these young people away from us.
All right, PJ, let's give you the floor. If your players are watching, if Gopher fans are watching, folks in Minnesota are watching, you have one final message before we close out?
Well, I think we just all have to be really intentional with all of our actions and not just have these intentions. We will tomorrow, we will tomorrow, we will tomorrow. We got to do it now. We have to be intentional with our actions. And whether that's practicing social distancing, whether that's checking on your neighbor, whether that's calling your mom and dad to check in, whether that's being a better humanitarian, whether that's being responsible with your own body to make sure that you don't infect anybody else. We will get through this. This is a very unprecedented time in our nation and our world and our globe that none of us have been through before. But if we all row the boat together and we all grab an oar and we all row in the same direction, same speed, same efficiency, and we're doing it together, we will get through it faster, better, and we'll actually have a better norm at the end because we're educated. And I think my wife, Heather, said it best. She said, Mother Nature told us all to go to our room and think about what we've all done. And with all due respect, she's right, because think about college football attendance as it went down this year. And now for the Gophers, it went up. We won 11 games. But when you think about over the years, college football attendance has gone down. Why? Because everybody can watch it from their phones. Everybody can quarantine themselves, right? That's what we were doing. 8 TVs in our house, watching it live on TVs, 8 different games. But we lost that sense of humanity. We lost that sense of being social. And now 2 weeks into quarantine, everybody's crabbing, complaining because we're in our home. But that's what we picked to do. We need to make sure that we don't take things for granted, whether that's our health, whether that's our family, whether that's sports, what we like to do with our leisure time. Let's make sure when we do get this new norm of whatever it looks like, because the old norm is not coming back, when we do get this new norm, we make it a better norm. So that's our message to our players. Row the boat, Sky Imago, Gophers. Rick, thanks for having us on the show.
Terrific message as always. Thanks for the time, PJ. Stay healthy.
You too, man. Bye-bye.